Well, hello. Good morning there. It's good to see you out there. Hope you all are doing well, feeling refreshed. Y'all ready for some extreme heat waves coming in? Think it's going to warm up to like 50 degrees here today. 57 tomorrow, 58 on Saturday. You're going to have to break out the sunscreen and sun hats. So, anyways, enough nonsense. Morning, Miss Donna, Mallory, Sharon, Rosa, Hector. Everyone else watching, give me a wave. Miss Tao, good to see you. Today, we're not finished. Next week we'll finish our goals for 2025. We've talked about our relationship with God, our relationship with our spouses and our kids. Today we're going to talk about our relationship with others. Then next week we're going to finish it out with my call and finances. Good morning, Chris. Good to see you. So today we're going to talk about our relationships with others. Morning, Miss Monica. Yeah, we can go outside. I mean, you can go outside now for a little bit, as long as you don't mind your ears and face being cold. I was texting with Tim and Pastor Brian up in New York. I said, hey, can y'all come get your weather and take it back up there for us, please? And they were mocking me. They were like, yeah, Texans can't really handle this. No, we don't like it. Then other people were like, I'm from Minnesota. I don't care where you're from. When it's in the teens, it's cold. When you have to wear 4 layers and mittens, it's cold. Anyways. People don't like me talking about the weather, apparently. Let's pray. Father, help. In Jesus' name. We thank you for today. We thank you for your goodness, your mercy, your unfailing love. We thank you your word is true. It is alive. It is powerful. We thank you that with your word and spending time in your word comes wisdom, knowledge, revelation, and understanding. So we thank you today that we would receive exactly that when your word goes forth, we would receive wisdom, knowledge, and understanding this morning in Jesus' name. So let's talk about our friendships, our relationships with others. Hello, Miss Dawn. This is usually one a lot of people ask me a lot of questions offline about. So if you have any questions, even if you've asked me before, because I know a lot of people have asked me about this before, throw them in the comments or text me or whatever if you don't want them being public that they're coming from you. Just because if you ask them, that means someone else is thinking the same thing. So your answer, or you're asking the question, the answer will benefit others as well. So if you have any questions when it comes to relationships with others or friendships, is it freezing? Eden says, what's wrong with Daddy? He's pausing all the time. Let me know if it's freezing or if it's just me being me. So yeah, if you have any questions, friendships, relationships, discipleship relationships, any of that kind of stuff, throw them right there in the comments and we will get to them today. All right, let's start with this one. Proverbs 27:17. And if I remember right, let me go. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in this. So we'll start with this one and we'll kind of break down Proverbs 27. It says, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. And I really like, let me see if it's in the New Living. Nope. It's going to be in the Amplified. Okay. Mallory says theirs is freezing. Anyone else, let me know if theirs is freezing. We have not got any reports of that. Hey, Joni. Good to see you. It keeps freezing up. Multiple people now. Are y'all? They're both on Facebook. It may be a Facebook issue. I'm moving to YouTube to see if it's better over there. Okay, so move over to YouTube. Those of you watching, everyone's saying it's a Facebook issue. YouTube is doing better. Oh, Jason figured out how to get on. Good. All right, so let's read Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. The New Living says, that's the ESV. The New Living says, iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. The Amplified says it this way. Hey, Miss Amy. Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend to show rage or worthy purpose. Then if you go back up, good morning, Miss Gail. Verse 9, the heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. So let's talk about that for a second. Because perfume and incense can be sweet, but it can also be overwhelming. Like if someone puts too much cologne or perfume on, it can be very overwhelming. I remember if I went shopping with my mom was real sensitive to colognes. Good morning, Tony. And so if we would go through the perfume section, she would like grab me and start running and like yelling at people. You know, like people are like, hey, do you want to smell this? Do you want to smell this? She would just yell at people and say, no, leave me alone. No, I'm just kidding. But no, she was sensitive to all the different smells, which I understand now. Like I like colognes, but I don't ever wear them because I just don't. They overwhelm me. Anyways, good morning, Stacy. Good morning again, Miss Dawn. I see you've changed sides over to YouTube. So those of you on Facebook, apparently there's a Facebook issue and it's kind of lagging a little bit. So if you want to go over to YouTube, it won't do that. If you want to stay on Facebook, just know I'm not pausing on purpose. So we are talking about our friendships, our relationships today, our relationships with others. Good job, Stacy. Stacy's switching over. We started off with Proverbs 27. Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. So right there, like that's one of my favorite verses whenever I'm looking at any kind of relationship, and we'll get into some more intense ones. But is this person sharpening me? Is this person making me better? Is this person actually pushing me towards God and making me more effective? Because that's what sharpening is, right? If you're talking about iron sharpening iron, like a knife or a sword, for it to be effective, it has to be sharp. So is this person making me sharper? Are they making me more effective for what I want to do? And a lot of our friendships or relationships the relationship problems can be solved by that one question. Is this person making me better, or are they making me worse? Are they making me sharper, or are they making me dull? Are they making me more effective or less effective? How do you deal with inescapable energy vampires while being compassionate towards them? Clemmy was telling me a story about something this morning, and she used this analogy of energy vampires that she had heard somewhere. And I don't want to say I fell in love with the term, but I was like, oh, like, you know the emoji where the brain is exploding? Like, that's what happened to me in that moment. I said, oh my goodness, I like that. That is perfect to describe a lot of people. Not a lot of people, some people. Some people, just anytime they're around you, suck the energy out of you, and you feel drained. You got to take a nap afterwards. And that's a great question. How do you deal with them, but still be compassionate towards them? And this is, let's go through this. So back to verse 9. The heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as a perfume and incense. And there's another one, let me find it, that's going to go perfect along with Clemmy's question. Proverbs 27, verse 6. Listen to this. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So this is what you have to learn. If that person's truly a friend and they're an energy vampire, they're sucking their life out of you, you should be able to be honest with them and tell them, hey, so-and-so, you've got to stop. Like, it has to stop. You can't do this every time. You can't be so dramatic about it. We should be able to talk about it without it being like a huge ordeal. Like, if they're your true friend, right, then they should be able to, yeah, they may be mad for a second, but they should be able to understand, hey, this person has my best interest at heart. This person actually cares about me. They care about me enough to tell me the truth. Whereas if you're not a true friend, what's that person going to do? They're just going to avoid you, right? I'm saying if you're the energy vampire. But if they're a true friend, they'll still come around you, but they'll tell you the truth. Yes, it'll be hard to receive the truth, but you have to be told that truth. I've told this story many times. Someone came and told me in Bible school, hey, Sean, everyone loves you, everyone likes being around you, but then they get to a point where they've had enough of you because you joke too much. And at first I was like, what? What are you talking about? And then I spent like 2 days thinking on it, praying on it. I was like, okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Got it. I'll pay attention to what I do. Like, I needed someone to tell me that. And it took a true friend, someone that actually cared about my well-being, my long-term well-being, to come and tell me that in love. So that's how you do that. You got to, first of all, evaluate the friendship, the relationship, whatever it is. Does this person see me as a true friend, or am I an acquaintance? Because if you're an acquaintance, you can't deal with that. If you're an acquaintance in an acquaintance relationship, the best way is to basically just, you can try being honest with them, and then they'll probably either cut you off or they'll actually become a good friend because they'll see that you care enough about them. They'll see that you care enough about them to tell them the truth. And that's one thing I've always appreciated. I remember someone I have a great relationship with now that's far past me in ministry. When we were going through something, they were dealing with me on something, and they didn't follow up the way they said they were going to, and I called them out on it. And they were like, you know what, Sean, you're absolutely right. I apologize. I'm wrong. Yeah. And like ever since then, our relationship went way forward, because if you have true people that care about you and are like care about your long-term benefit of your life, they should be able to tell you the truth, and you should be able to handle it. Whether it's what you want to hear or not in your flesh, you should know if that person, now who you surround yourself with, which we'll get to in a little bit, makes a big difference. If you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of losers and you want to hear the truth from them, that's going to be a lot different truth than people that are advanced than you are. So who the company we're talking about, it can have completely different scopes of reality. So people help refine each other. They help each other through meaningful interactions, accountability, and encouragement. That's what I was trying to look for. One translation, and it may be in a commentary, actually says that you sharpen another man through. Let me see if it's in the Amplified Classic before we move on, because the way they word it is so good. I was trying to figure out who TN was on YouTube, but I'm assuming that's Miss Tao, because that's the cover of your book, if I remember right, by deductive reasoning. All right, let's see what the Amplified Classic says. Nope, that's not it either. There's another translation somewhere that says, by discussion, we sharpen each other. So by being honest, by encouraging people according to the word, you actually sharpen them. You make them better. So it's through those discussions and through those interactions that you actually help your friends out. If you're not able to have you ever had a friend or you were in a relationship with someone to where you just, no matter what, no matter how you tried to have the conversation, they took it the wrong way? And they always took it away. You're like, I wasn't even thinking like it that way. Those are the people that makes it hard to be able to have honest conversations with. But at some point, they have to make a choice, and maybe this is you. I mean, I think a lot of us have been there at some point when we were young. You've got to make a choice to decide, okay, I've got to surround myself with some good friends and listen to what they tell me. Because here's the thing about friends, and especially like more mature friends, where you're trying to make a decision and you may have emotion involved in the decision, they don't. So they can see outside of the emotional attachment to the thing, to the person, to the job, to the school, to whatever it is, to the car, to whatever. they are removed from that emotional attachment. So they can make great decisions for you because they don't have the emotional attachment to it. To where sometimes when we're trying to make decisions, it's hard for us to make decisions because of an emotional attachment. So that's why surrounding yourself with good friends is so important. So let's go on. Constructive criticism. We're still talking about Proverbs 27:17. Talks about the importance of godly friendships that provide honest feedback and correction to sharpen our character and faith. That's kind of what I was talking about. We've got to have those friendships and those relationships that we can have open and honest conversation with. If you don't have anyone that you can be completely open to, then that means you probably need to get your life right. I mean, as a Christian, that probably means you're hiding something. We should all have somebody that we can be completely open and honest with. Whether that's your spouse, whether that's a best friend, whether it's both, whatever, a pastor, whatever. So it says this also, the friction created in these interactions can be uncomfortable, but ultimately beneficial. That's what I was saying. Like, I think, was it between last week and this week was like 14 days of awkward conversations for me. And that's just part of being in my position, right? Is some of them are friends, some are employees, some of them are volunteers, whatever they are. I was just put in a position the last 2 weeks where I had to have a bunch of uncomfortable conversations. But they were all done out of love for the person and wanting growth in the person or the department or the church as a whole. So sometimes we as individuals have to get over our own feelings of, I don't want to make this uncomfortable. I don't want to create anything. You got to get over that and tell people the truth. That's the only way you can grow. It actually causes growth for both. That's why it says iron sharpens iron. Two strong people are going to make each other stronger. One strong person and one weak person is going to make one person stronger. That's why having strong people around you is so important. So let's see. Let's go to Matthew 3. Matthew 3, verse 10. Yeah, that's the one I shared a little earlier as well, Miss Dawn. Proverbs 27:5, or verse 6, whichever one it was. 3 verse 10, Matthew 3 verse 10. Even now, the axe of God's judgment is poised, ready to sever the roots of the tree. Yes, every tree that does not produce good fruit will be chopped down and thrown into the fire. So that's what we have to ask ourselves. He was talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees there, rebuking them. Basically saying, like, you can't say one thing and say you're producing a different kind of fruit. The outside and the inside are going to produce the same kind of fruit. So you can't live one way and then expect your fruit to produce something the opposite way. If you want to produce good fruit, you've got to live a righteous life. So with that said, if you want your friends, let's go this way. All friends and relationships should be producing good fruit. If they're not, according to this, we should sever it off, chop it by the tree, chop it off like a tree. So let's talk about friendships a little bit. Friendships are a little different than relationships, especially different at different stages of life. I feel like at the earlier stages, this can be a little harsh. I think the more mature we get, the older we get, then I think we should live this to a T. I think when you're going through, when you're still a teenager and stuff, if you're an on-fire Christian and you have friends that are still Christians, still going to church, still trying to figure it all out, then there's no reason to cut them off. Now, if you have someone that's trying to pull you out to parties and get you drunk and give you drugs and get you sleeping, then yes, absolutely, you should cut that off. Now, as you get older and more mature, then I think, especially it depends on what you feel called to, where you're running your life. Some people are in the business world, and they've got to have different kinds of relationships, but there needs to be a relationship with boundaries, and that's a whole nother topic. But I think, like, if you're called to ministry, your friendships look a lot different than if you're called to business. That's just the reality of it. So you've got to be mature enough to handle those situations as well and know, when should I cut relationships and friendships off and when should I not? Like I said, relationships I think are a lot more key. I'm talking like romantic relationships, right? You've got to remember they have a lot more influence. You're talking to them every day, especially in the early stage. It's like every minute of every day, right? Like you're on the phone with them all the time. You're basic. Clemmy and I were joking about this earlier. What were we even talking about that started this conversation? Oh, okay. Yeah, I know that, but I mean, how did that get to when we were talking about high school friends? Anyway.
We were talking about teenagers.
Okay, yeah, we were talking about teenagers for some reason, and I was just laughing because whenever I try to tell teenagers and explain to young people now because you base so many of your decisions. That's what we were talking about, basing our decisions. You base so many of your decisions in that period of that window of time on what others think about you and what others are doing and what they're telling you should be doing. But then in 5 to 7 years from them, you're not even friends with those people. For 80% of people in the world. And so when you look back on it, you feel so stupid for making decisions based on people you're not even friends with for the rest of your life. And some of those decisions have derailed people's lives forever. They've ended up in jail. They've ended up with diseases. They've ended up dead. They've ended up paralyzed. Whatever it is, it has affected them for the rest of their lives. Some people, it's even affected their eternity. So that we just have to get to a place where we surround ourselves with friends and relationships that are putting us on the course we want to be on and that aren't going to allow us to go a different course. That's the iron sharpening iron. That has to be the foundation of our friendships and our relationships. So Matthew 3:10, we read that. Let's go to Luke 3:19. Luke 3:19. That is not what I wanted. Let's ignore that. John 15. I know I want that one. John 15. All right, here we go. John 15. We'll start in verse 1. We'll read. We will read until I decide we're not going to. I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit. Okay, right there. If that friendship, if that relationship is not producing fruit, cut it off. That's just it. Cut it off. It says, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit. So this goes back to the iron sharpening iron. Prunes the branches that do bear fruit. Why? So they will produce even more fruit. Is that person challenging you, encouraging you? I don't mean like beating you down, but are they encouraging you to produce more fruit? Some people, and y'all will know what I'm talking about. Some of you will know someone that just their life, watching them, listening to them, being around them, encourages you to do more. Like Troy is that for me. Those of you that know Troy Bravenbauer that's been around a couple times, I know the students know him. Like, he and I weren't great friends in Bible school. We became great friends in the last few years. He's just one of those guys that I feel like I do quite a bit. But anytime you're around him, you feel like you're doing nothing. And he's not convicting you. He's not like saying things. He's just one of those guys that encourages you, and his life just makes you want to do more and be more active and be more efficient and be more effective. You need to have people like that around you. You don't want people around you that just make you want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch TV all the time. Is there a time for that? Yeah, there's a time to relax and mentally just shut off. There's a time for that. But if that's all your friends encourage you to do, they're probably not great friends. A lot of it depends. A lot of it depends on what you want your accomplishments to be in life. How much do you want to do for the kingdom of God? Do you want to do great things? Do you want to get to heaven and God go, man, why'd you try to do so much? Just relax. You could have relaxed. Or would you want to get to heaven and go like, God go, hey, like, I gave you all these talents. Why didn't you do anything with them? And I think that's a pretty simple answer for most of us that would be watching this broadcast. But maybe you stumbled upon this broadcast and you don't know what I'm talking about, and you ask yourself all the time, what is my life going to count for? God right here in John 15 tells us, he cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they will produce even more. Listen to verse 3. You have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. That's this word. This word prunes us. It purifies us. It produces fruit on the inside of us. Remain in me and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine. You cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. There is point number one on any friendship, any relationship that you want to produce fruit. Are they attached to the vine? Are they attached to the vine? If they're not attached to the vine, then that's going to be a hard friendship. Now listen to me. There are discipleship relationships where you are trying to win people to the Lord. So that's a completely different thing. But they shouldn't be pulling you in the opposite direction. That's just the end of that. If they're pulling you in the opposite direction, that thing needs to be cut off. But as for a friendship, a relationship, point number one, don't be unequally yoked. That's talking about business. That's talking about relationships. That's talking about friendships. Are they pulling you down, or are they pulling you up? Are they making you better, or are they making you worse? Are they pulling you away from God or closer to God? If they're pulling you closer to God, that's a good friendship. That's one you should keep. Verse 5, yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. So I know a lot of Christians say we're not supposed to judge people, but the Bible is very clear that we should judge people by their fruit. We should judge people according to their fruit. And right here it says we are called to produce much fruit. This isn't for those in ministry. This is for a Christian. A Christian should be producing much fruit to where we can look at their lives and say, yeah, I can tell the hand of God's on them. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. Now watch verse 9 through a little bit. I have loved you even when the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. So again, is that person happy? I mean, right there, that says that one of the fruits of a Christian should be that they're happy, that they're joyous, that their joy overflows. That's one sign of being attached to the vine. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. So there's another thing. Can you confide in that person? Can you trust them with what you tell them? Now you are my friends since I have told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other. So that's a good principle. Are they producing fruit? Do they have joy? Do they carry the love of God? Those things will help you and save you from a lot of trouble. Matthew 7. It's so crazy that whenever you use a different Bible every day, like this was my Bible from last year that I used every day. This is the one I'm using this year every day. So you get used to how the pages turn in one Bible, and like right now when I'm trying to find stuff, when I could usually turn right to it, I'm like turning 5 books away from it. Anyways, it's just weird how quick your hands get used to a Bible. Verse 15, 7:15. Matthew 7:15. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit. You can identify them by their fruit. That is, by the way they act. You can identify people by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. And a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Listen to this. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. I mean, this is a big one on romantic relationships. If someone keeps doing the same actions and their actions don't line up with their words, that's not producing good fruit. If you're not married, cut that thing off now. Because if their actions are repetitive, that means they're not going to change. Now, if they mess up and they're apologizing and they're working to do their stuff, that's a lot different. But the Bible's very clear. You can identify people by their fruit, by their actions. Philippians 2, verse 3. Jason, you look like you got questions. No. Philippians 2, verse 3. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. You want a good friend? You want a good spouse? Do they constantly put you before themselves? That's a good friend. Will they put your needs and your benefit before their own? That's a good friend. I had some friends in high school like that it didn't matter. Like, even when we weren't living right, like, you could call them and they would be there no matter what. They would drop everything. Now, not so much. But in those that 2-year window, they were great friends. But I have people like that now too. Like, it doesn't matter if they're states away. They would come instantly if I needed them. They would drop everything. Do you have people in your life that care more about your own success than their own? Matthew 7:12. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. Do people treat you the way that they want to be treated? Do they treat you the way you want to be treated? And flip that around. Do you treat people the way you want to be treated? And that's also the point number one is, or I know all of this is point number one. What I'm saying as importance-wise, like foundational-wise, all these things are foundational. Are you a good friend to people? If you're not a good friend, then that's fine. Acknowledge it. Sort it out. Like, figure it out. Figure out what am I doing that doesn't line up with the word? What areas of my life do I need to fix so I can be a good friend? So that I can be a good spouse? So that I can be a good mentor to somebody? So sometimes a lot of this is harder on us because we have to I'm big on self-evaluation. I'm big on doing this. Oh man, look at that. Sean, you need to get that right. Sean, you need to work on that. And because if we're not doing that, then how can we help others? How can we help others if we're not willing to be honest with ourselves? And what does the word say? It says, why are you worried about the thorn in your brother's when you have a speck in your own eye? Or the speck in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own eye? Sometimes we got to sort ourselves out before we can be worried about others. I'm blessed to have 1 to 2 people that have my best interest at heart and truly unselfish friends. Yeah, you've got to find those 1, 2, 3 people. And that's why, like, I know you talk about, everyone talks about inner circles and stuff, but Jesus had an inner circle inside of his inner circle. He had the 12 disciples. Then he narrowed it down to 11 because one took himself out. But then he had 3 within the 12. So yeah, you may have some close friends of 12. But then you have like 3 within that are like your close-knit friends that you can go to about anything and everything, and you take with you everywhere you go. What else do we want to go over? Galatians 6:2. This is a good one. Bear one another's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ. Do you have a friend that'll bear your burdens with you? Whether they're physical, good morning, Angie. Whether they're mental, emotional, whatever. Do you have someone that will go through the tough times with you, hold you by the arm, pick you up, and say, hey, let's go. We're in this together. Okay, so I just got an anonymous question from Anonymous. Let me read it. How do you go about talking to a friend or family member about how their actions or lack of consideration makes you feel? That's a great question. I mean, a lot of it goes to, there's so many elements to this. A lot of it goes to, number one, how can they handle it? Are they able to handle it? Number one. But number two, and probably more importantly in the long run, and a lot easier to deal with, the more mature you get in life, maybe not, depending on some individuals, is how much more can you take, right? Am I to a breaking point to where if I don't at least express this, that it's going to crumble me? If you're to that point, you just got to let it go and not care how it settles. That doesn't mean you're a jerk about it. That doesn't mean you're just rude and hateful about it. But at the same time, like, if you're to that point, you just got to tell them once. If they choose to handle it poorly, that's up to them. And the other thing, like, if you... I can't give personal examples. Okay, well, so my dad, you know, he loves me, he cares about what I'm doing, but yet at the same time, I talk to him once a month, maybe, right? My relationship with him growing up was sometimes great, sometimes not great, sometimes whatever. Different seasons of life he's been around, other different seasons of life he hasn't. So for me to go to him now and tell him how those things have made me feel would do what? Nothing, right? But at the same time, I'm mature enough now to realize that and realize, hey, because of I believe in this, that isn't going to affect me or make me feel better. Now there are other instances where that's completely the opposite. To where those people are involved daily or weekly or whatever, bi-weekly, whatever it is. So there's a lot more interaction, so that it makes it a lot harder as far as not being able to say anything. I hope that makes sense. And so that's why I'm saying there may be a point where you just have to don't care what the repercussions are. And I don't mean like in a negative way, but if they've been hurting you long enough emotionally to the point where you have to say something, then you say something respectfully, maturely. My suggestion would be write it down so it's not emotionally based and it's not an emotional rant. But it's something that's thought through, that you're saying when you're not emotionally worked up, because the worst thing that would happen is starting that conversation and then emotions start flying and then you just start vomiting out of your emotional self instead of a calm self. So write something down and have it prepared and just say, hey, I would like to talk to you about something. this and this and this has been happening, and I need to be able to, for my own sanity, say this is how it's made me feel. I'm not asking you to do anything about it. I just have to acknowledge the way this has made me feel and see how it goes from there. But that would be like step one, being able to get it out. You can't control well, I'll take that back. Bible tells us a soft answer turns away wrath. So how you word it, how your tone of voice is, how your mannerisms are, and this is something Mallory and I talk about all the time, especially with having a little kid. Like, they observe and absorb everything. So if you, in the slightest bit, panic or something, then they panic. So, like, learning how to be in control of your mannerisms, your tone of voice, your pitch of voice, your volume of voice, the way you move your hands, everything has to be, I don't want to say like controlled, like you're like a freak and obsessed with it, but you have to be aware of that kind of stuff. How to ask an anonymous question. You can, Stacy, you can either send me a Facebook message, you can email. They'll put the email in that you can do it. You can email admin@citcdallas.com and we won't, or .org, sorry, and we won't know who you are. So anyone that wants to ask that, because that's good. What will telling this person about the actions they took in the past do for you now? Yeah, that's exactly, Tal. That's the important question. And in some instances, it'll do a lot. Like it'll help that person close that door to that chapter of life, right? So they can move on. Because some people, there's been so much trauma and so much damage that this door's just been kind of left swinging open in the wind. Sometimes it's shut, sometimes it's open, sometimes it's shut, sometimes it's open, to where it's caused chaos in their life. And that's where it's hard if it's someone that they're around all the time. But then, like, there's a lot about this that can be answered, but that's the best way to keep it generalized. Is you have to ask yourself, by addressing this, am I going to get closure, or is it going to just open it up to make it much worse? And in some instances, it'll be a benefit. In other instances, it won't be a benefit. And you just got to weigh that out. And weigh out, can I close this chapter between me, the Lord, and if I'm getting counseling or mentorship from those people? Or in order to close this, do I absolutely have to address this person? And there are instances for both. And you just have to weigh that out and decide which course you have to take. So yeah, any of y'all can, if you want anonymous questions, you can email that email address, admin@citcdallas.org, and then they will read them out to me, and we can go from there. And I have a few other scriptures while y'all are doing that, and if you have other questions that you don't care if they're anonymous, you can throw them in the comments. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 11. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 11. Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. So are you encouraging people? So again, are you a good friend? Are you a good spouse? Are you encouraging people? Are you encouraging people? And I think especially in the spousal relationship, that can get hard because some people take things differently, right? And sometimes, again, like I've had to constantly work on making sure my tone of voice is right, making sure all of that is right, because I think I'm an encourager, but I think sometimes the way I word it or the way I say it sometimes doesn't come across as encouraging. I can be very sarcastic, but I truly am trying to encourage people. That's one thing I feel I'm called to do, is push people beyond where they think they can go and push them to an even greater level that God sees them at. And so that's what we have to ask ourselves. Are we encouragers? And do we do it in the way that those people need to receive it? Because people receive in different things. Some people can receive in words. Some people receive in actions. Some people receive in, I mean, you could get into the whole 5 love languages thing there. But Hebrews 10:24. let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works. Are we stirring up people to do good works and to love other people like Christ is doing? Miss Amy said, thank you for doing that. What did I do? I don't know what I did. Philippians 2, verse 4. Philippians 2, verse 4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. You know, we talked about that a little bit in Philippians 2, 3. But are we looking at other people and what's best for them? Are we mature enough to not make it about ourselves all the time? Like for those of us that work for the church, we have to, or those of you that are serving in a leadership role as a volunteer, we have to learn that, okay, what's always best for me selfishly and my department isn't always what's best for the church. What is best for the church as a whole? That's what the priority is, right? Why? Because when we're called to leadership, it's not about us. It's not about our ambition. It's about taking care of everyone collectively. And so that can get very hard. And we've had a lot of internal discussions lately that, hey, we've been so great at building these new departments up and create like the Bible school, outreach, inreach, all these different new things. I mean, Clemmy, how many new departments did we launch last year? Like 16 or 17, something like that? Yeah. Some crazy number, right? But we've been so focused on that for 2 years that we've got to refocus some things back to main church, back to what affects everyone collectively, what's going to touch everyone. Because sometimes we get so focused on us that we take our eyes off the big picture. And that can go for people in relation, even in marriage. Like you get so focused on you that you forget about your spouse and the kids and functioning as a family. And same with friendships. You get so focused on, oh, I want this job. Oh, I want this relationship, that you lose sight of the relationship or the friendship, and you actually become detrimental to it. So that's something we always have to keep in front of us. Encouraging people to grow even when it's uncomfortable. It's the only way you can grow is when you're uncomfortable. I mean, I know I give fitness analogies as much as possible, and people don't like them, but the only way to grow in the gym or fitness-wise is to be uncomfortable. Like it's not comfortable having 200 pounds on your shoulders and doing squats. It's not comfortable running when it's hot or cold outside. It's not comfortable doing something that's going to make your muscles sore for the next 2 days. It's not comfortable eating the same thing every day for months at a time. None of that's comfortable. None of that's fun. No, I mean, it gets to a point where it is fun because it's de-stressing, but whatever. But there are many things that help you grow that are not comfortable. So, any questions, comments? Okay, so I got this question. How do you disciple a longtime friend that you're not that close with anymore without sacrificing your own walk or getting close with that friend again? That's a great question, and a lot of times it's not possible. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's not possible. And that's what makes families so hard to disciple as well, is they feel like they're so close to you. Like some of my friends, I remember when I first rededicated my life to the Lord and got set free from alcoholism, they would tell me or tell my other friends, oh, it's just a phase, just wait a little bit, he'll be back to normal. Yeah, like they just see you as you were. They don't see you as who you are now. So that can be very hard a lot of times. And a lot of times it's not doable because they just see you as you were then. They don't respect where you are now. So that's just the reality. I mean, if it's doable, then it's easy. If it's not doable, then you just cut it off. I mean, that's just the way it is. Any other questions? So if you have any questions as far as that, get them in now. I'm going to check just my email and messages real quick because sometimes they come in. And don't be that friend that wears too much cologne, because then your friends around you start sniffling and coughing and sneezing. So just don't be that friend. Sometimes you got to cut those friendships off by the root. All right, well, if there's no more questions, then we will let you go and go about your day today. Next week, we're going to talk about our calling and our finances. And I'll get pretty personal with my calling. So, cool. Well, if you have any questions afterwards, you can always email them in, and I'll bring them back up next week. So, love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. We will see you next week on Thursday at 10. I will be here live, even though we have revival at night. Just to finish that out, finish this little short series out. Don't forget, we have Evangelist Ted starting. Of course, Joni. Thank you for being here. Evangelist Ted starting this Sunday morning, and every night at 7 p.m. What all do we have going on Saturday? Is it soul winning or is it nursing home? Nursing homes this Saturday. Don't forget, live stream today at 2, live stream tomorrow at 10, live stream tonight and tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can't say we don't give you enough of the word, for sure. I mean, some days we go live 3 times. Well, not live, but you know what I'm saying. We have broadcasts 3 times a day. And that could turn into more. The more we have more pastors come on staff, and the more we do stuff. You know, maybe at some point we're live 24 hours a day. Or broadcasting 24 hours a day. Amen. I believe there will be like not just preaching, but also maybe some, I'm getting way out there in vision casting. Maybe it'll be like some TV series, some movies, some Broadway productions, Clemmy, right? We'll have Clemmy singing worship songs in opera. All right, love you guys. Y'all have a great day. Adios. Hasta luego. Ciao.